So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. And as I mentioned in the last Globinar, which was 1 hour ago, I am so excited about 2026. I think it's going to be the best year ever, not only for us, but I think for almost all of us, certainly on the business side. The story I transferred before was regarding our next Tuesday conversation about the business outlook for North America and globally by BMO Bank. And the chief economic officer uh, told me that she was very worried because she thinks it's going to be great this year, and everybody else seems to think it's going to be great. So that worried her because, are we headed down the garden path, meaning expecting maybe something that we weren't expecting, or are we reading the tea leaves correctly? But certainly, what we see so far is really great and spectacular. And I think generally what we see year after year is a general trend toward more trade, more activity, more growth. By the way, not that I think, it is true, basically, that the trend is continually up around global business. The world is changing and the amount of global business is changing. This is where the action is on the global side. The problem, if there is a problem, is that not enough people have figured it out. In our last meeting, they haven't figured out cross-cultural issues. They don't have some of the topics that we talked about, which is they don't have flexibility and they don't know how to adjust, and they can't live in a world where two truths might be the same, even though they seem to be quite competing. Um, the mindfulness of a Frank Beckman, who's in the room here, and all of you, the fact that you're part of Global Chamber means that you probably have some level of mindfulness that's way above average. And those are all key things. But what if you don't have those things? And what if you're a normal leader? Or what if you're just someone who wants to do good no matter what your skill level is? And so that's why we're here today to talk about leadership, because it's never been more important, not just because the world's growing and most of the opportunities that are there, not just because leadership is important just generally, and that when you're doing it globally, it's more complex, but also because of all of these changes with artificial intelligence. We talked about the internet years, decades ago, that this was going to revolutionize everything decades ago, and it did over some level of time revolutionized everything. AI and what's happening now is it's happening at so much of a faster pace. And yet, while the world grows, we need to be better leaders. And so Rutherford and Dr. Pauline Crawford are here to save the day, to save us, and to give us the information we need
Wow.
to survive and thrive. And so, what do you think, Rutherford? Are you going to
Well,
save us?
I don't, well, first of all, no. I can't say. And Lulu's here too. So,
Yay.
I think we can help you in the experiences that we have, have do better than we did last year. How can we improve 1%, 2% from what are the things that you did last year? So that's what we're trying to do with leadership. One of the things I always talk about with leadership is you don't get to the top. There's no Mount Everest. You've gotten there. Hey, we're done. We've accomplished the goal, right? It's always learning, it's always changing, we're always growing, we're always getting better. So that's why we have these calls, and that's why I can tell you, Lulu and Dr. Pauline Crawford, I can say we are always growing. We never believe we have arrived. So I think that's what's important. And so it's really interesting what you just said about optimism, flexibility, because that's a hallmark of great leadership, right? You have to, when you have a strong vision for the future, you have some certain level of optimism of not that you're going to get there, how you're going to get there, and how you're going to bring everybody aboard. That's great thinking, great leadership. And people typically start thinking like that at the beginning of the year. Great leaders think like that 365, right? They don't think about it January 1. They think about it 365. So I'll stop there.
I think today we were going to talk a little bit about culture, right?
Yeah.
How would you frame up what you'd like to accomplish in the next 50?
No, it's interesting, and Pauline and I were talking before you jumped on, and culture is ubiquitous. So culture is in everything, right? It's in if you're a great leader, you think about culture. So what culture people think about culture is having these benefits on in insurance plans. Hey, babysitting and and these different little things and foosball table, tables, like these uh, on Friday we have happy hour. They think about culture like that. And a lot of people say, "Hey, they got a great. We have these drinks." When I have always talked about culture, to me, there's a culture. There's also a culture of performance. You have a performance culture, right? You have a culture where people treat people the right way. You have a so there's also those things that are really important. You talked about flexibility, adaptability, collaboration. All those are part of a culture. All those are really, really, really important in the culture. And I know we'll talk about some of those things, if not all those things today, and as part of our leadership.
Fantastic. That I appreciate that very much. Rutherford is the founder of Glass Walls Leadership. He himself has a long career in the pharmaceutical industry, so in kind of a big pharma and very successful. He now coaches not only people in that industry, but in multiple industries all over the world. And he and I share a love for John Maxwell, and I did end up reading almost 20 of his books last year, John Maxwell's books, several of them multiple times. In particular, that's that one about good leaders ask great questions, and there's a variety of other ones that were just like 3-hour audiobooks that are gems. And so not only is Rutherford spectacular, but John Maxwell is pretty good too. And I highly recommend getting involved. And it's a great bridge to have conversations with Rutherford because he knows John Maxwell inside and
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Pauline Crawford's the vice president of International University of Entrepreneurology. And so Dr. Crawford has a very global background. She's not only from the UK, but travels and works all over the world. And she knows the world of entrepreneurs and she knows the world of leadership. And so, Dr. Crawford, as we enter this conversation today, would you like to make some opening comments and talk a little bit maybe about culture and maybe some of the things that you and Rutherford hope to accomplish today?
Absolutely. And I think, thank you, Rutherford. That was really good. And Doug, what you said, I think I'm very optimistic about 2026. I think we've gone through a big gateway to understanding that although there's lots of crazy stuff happening in the world, I'll say that politely, um, there is opportunity. So with our entrepreneurology leadership model, it's all about opportunity seeking rather than problem solving. So a culture that recognizes that is on the way and using imagination. So that's one of the key things, understanding what's the experience of last year, what's the experience of COVID, what's the experience of being in another country. I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. I never expected to do that. It was an amazing experience. You suddenly realize the world looks different than when you're sitting in London or Las Vegas, where I am now. And understanding cultural differences is being good at being observant, at listening and understanding relationships. So for me, people are key. My favorite leader in the world, other than you, Doug, of course, is Richard Branson, because he says, if you don't understand people, you shouldn't be in business. And I totally concur with that. I think that the leader who goes with control and too much fear is in the bin. They're out. So we've got to look at the flexibility, the ability to see what's going on around you, what do people need. I call my mentoring lighthouse visionary mentoring, that we are all a lighthouse, we shine a light. So the leader who understands how to shine a light across the world is going to be quids in. I went to Tanzania last July to be with Nima, and that was an extraordinary experience being there and being in a totally different culture once again, and just realizing that people are people. And of course, I study how women and men lead the world differently. And I say it's a bit like the straight line meeting the curve. I hope all you gentlemen understand me. So the straight line, which is a very male projection, everything is in order. And the curve, which is women who look into the round, we nurture the world, we bring in elements of seeding growth in a different way. I don't know whether any of you saw, but I reposted an article which had 6 women, and one of them was Sarah Blakely. And these women are all multimillionaires who have done everything without venture capital. So you need to look at that article. Interestingly, their products are all rather female-based, but the female market is huge. So I think the growth that we see in 2026 is not only understanding the global cultures, but understand the markets are changing. Where is the market? You know, it might be mining and construction, farming, but it might also be beauty, healthcare. You know, there's some amazing markets which may be only for women, only for men, only for young people, only for old people. You know, there's so much opportunity out there. And with AI and all of that, it's actually added to the advantage. What we have to get away from is control. I think, you know, moving from control to a much more flexible leadership where you listen, observe, you play more with imagination. Anything is possible now we have AI. Anything. And the possibilities are absolutely huge. But we've got to get out of our fear base and control base. Yes, have discipline, but also have love and respect and kindness and meaningful conversations, as you said, Doug. And I think, you know, I do a lot of work with women where I actually challenge women. I know we've got some lovely women on the call here. Dana, I can see you there. But I challenge women. And when I was in Tanzania, I'd like to tell you that I said to an audience of women entrepreneurs, if half the world is female, why do we still have wars? I want you
Mm.
guys to think about that. That was not a slant against men. It was, how do women organize themselves to be a very strategic but loving, harmonious leaders with wise men, which I respect all of you on the call are wise men, because you're looking at growth. And maybe we should play more, Doug. I think if we use our imagination and we understand people and relationships, we can actually make the world a much more seamless place. Because as you step off the plane in a different culture, what you need to do is open up your eyes and your heart and listen. When I landed in Malaysia, the first program I ran was for the Ministry of Women, and I had men and women in the room. All were Muslim Malaysian, and I was talking about gender dynamics. It was a fascinating environment, and they all understood that I wasn't coming to critique their culture. I was coming to help them understand how to work better together, and they all responded brilliantly. I'd never ever been in that culture before. I just used my eyes and my heart, and the whole thing went really well. So I think there are lessons that we can learn, especially listening to women and listening to men about how we are different. And that difference is magical and meaningful. So that's my thing is the mountains of imagination are there for us, Doug. And this year will be amazing.
You mentioned Richard Branson, and his initial book on leadership was one of the books I read this year. And you talk about listening. Listening was the first cornerstone of his leadership approach. Listen, learn. Anybody know the third one?
Love,
Listen, learn, and
love,
Communicate,
laugh.
laugh.
Listen, learn, and laugh.
and love. And to play. You see, we got to play. We got to laugh more and play more and
Okay,
smile more.
there you go. There you go. And so only someone who could laugh could come up with virgin condoms as a product and a business, which they actually did, and he does cite that as one of his two biggest failures: virgin condoms, and also his approach to find an alternative to Coca-Cola. That did not work out really well either. So,
But what I love about Richard Branson, he's okay with mistakes. I mean, he's had some major challenges in his companies where he lost a lot of money on the space stuff, but it doesn't stop him. And that's the thing is you can't let the devil get you down. And I posted in the comments what I do, and our PhD is a life earned credential. Richard Branson is absolutely number one star on that. But if we can actually understand that life is the experience that teaches us everything.
so maybe if you don't mind, and I'd like to include Lulu as
Yeah.
the third leg of all of this, but also there's some extraordinary other people in the audience here as well. If you don't mind, Rutherford, I'd like to start building off of what the two of you started with, to tie it back to Richard Branson and culture, and something my wife told me after I read the Richard Branson book. I was very excited. It's like, wow, I love his approach. I love listening and learning, and I really adapted those into the business plan for Global Chamber. And she subsequently told me, you cannot like Richard Branson. He is horrible, and so she's been reading the Epstein files. And so Richard Branson apparently was involved with the Epstein stuff. And so why I'm bringing that up is it goes to me back to global mindset. And as leaders, how do we create a culture that has integrity, but also potentially and hopefully has a culture that where two truths can be the same, that a Richard Branson can be a great leader, and I think he is, and he's a great writer. Well, maybe not a great writer. I didn't think his writing was honestly that great the last two books that I've read, but he's a brilliant leader. It seems like, and clearly, no question, been very successful, and yet. I don't know all the details, quite honestly, but why I bring that up is my wife is someone, after 44 years of marriage, we found ways to live with each other. And one of the differences is she has a hard time having two things exist at the same time. And so hearing in the earlier meeting where that's part of global thinking is you can have that was a little bit enlightening for me. So Rutherford, if you don't mind, I'll start with you from a cultural perspective. How can we create a culture that has multiple truths in it and have it be successful in a world that's full of chaos and epic changes and opportunity, and yet we need to have certain things that are sticks in the ground. This is true, right? As leaders?
Yeah, yeah. So everybody is complex. There's not any of us that are just one thing, right? And we all have different beliefs. And I don't want to bring up any specific things, but if you think about people that are friends, I'll give you an example. I have two people that I used to lead, and they were best friends. Their political belief was diametrically opposite, but their values were 100% aligned, right? So they wanted this goal. To get to this goal, they had different paths of getting there. So their thing was, listen, we love each other. We just never talk about that topic. Like we just don't get engaged in that situation. But they respected each other's opinion about that topic they weren't going to talk about. They just they understood that the other 98% of them they agreed with, they liked, and things like that. So I think you're never going to get everybody to believe in the same thing in the same amount of same passion level. And by the way, you shouldn't. If the goal is for everybody to agree, you've probably failed, right? I would say this almost 100% you failed because you want differences, you want different opinions, you want different things. So you can have two truths. And you should have two truths. You should have three or four truths in when you before you decide. And once you make a decision, you travel down that path in a united fashion. But having differences, having two things, three things, four things occurring at the same time, that is part of leadership. That's you're trying to get this different information and choose what's the best path. I often tell people that they say, listen, I've tried everything and it doesn't work. And I always tell people there's usually like five answers. There's five ways to solve almost every problem. Five. And one of the ways to solve it is to ignore it, right? That's one of the five ways. But there's always three or four real options. And every single time I interrogate those people who say, I've tried everything, I give them things. I said, have you tried that? They go, oh no, I forgot that. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, because the reason is we're only one person and we're thinking in typically a linear direction. And when we bring other people in, they're thinking differently. They might solve it in a different way or might think about it in a different way. So, it, uh, Doug, I think in every great situation with great leadership, you're going to have multiple truths happening. And it's part of the role of the leader to choose which one is the ideal one at this time for the company, for the person to move the ball forward.
I presume that's part of the culture you want to create as a leader. Could you talk a little bit about, because you
Yeah.
really wanted to make sure we talked about culture. What are some of the things that you think about, like what a healthy and unhealthy culture is, and how do you set the stage in terms of creating a platform really of a culture that enables success?
Well, so culture comes from things that are said and things that are not said. So actually, the things that are not said are usually more important than the things that are said, right? There's things that are assumed and the things that are known, right? So you set this culture by living it. You as the leader have to embrace that, be part of your DNA, because people will people will react from what you do as the ultimate leader. As the ultimate leader, they will say, "Well, I can't do that because Pauline doesn't allow that." Or, "Oh, listen, I'm going to talk to Pauline, and she will listen. She will listen to me, and then we can have a discussion." So that all comes from how you are, right? How you talk about Richard Branson. I always talk about there's and this is not a political thing. This is just different leaders. If you have Richard Branson and Elon Musk, who are two completely different leaders, right? The people they attract, they're attracted to that kind of that leader. So if you had people who worked for Elon, they absolutely could not work for Richard. They couldn't work for them because it's because of the value, because of how they attacked, and because Richard's going to be more, he's going to have this word called trust, right? It's going to be his biggest thing because he's going to be hands off, and most of the time he's going to say, "Here's what I want you to do, Fred, this is what I want you to do, and go ahead and do it, and let me know how it's going." Elon probably is not going to do it. He's going to be more. hands-on. He's going to have more meetings. He's going to be more demanding. He's going to go, so it's how the leader sets the temperature of the room, how he or she sets the temperature of the company. So let me stop there and get Pauline and Lulu.
Well, I was going to agree that, the light that the leader shines is the one that gives the, and it's all about words, isn't it? It's how we hear words. So what I put into mix is our perceptions. Your wife's perception, Doug, of what the situation is perceptions are very personal, but our perspective is an opinion which we can have or not. And we can always say to somebody, well, fascinating, interesting perception or a perspective, rather, I don't necessarily agree. And I think the other challenge we have as a world community is the illusion of what is, because we don't know. We're making assumptions the whole time. And the challenge we have with AI now is that any picture can be doctored. Any picture could be absolutely not what you think. I was sitting with a friend, my husband and I were sitting with a friend, and she took a picture of us with a space between us, and then she AI'd a Father Christmas to come and sit between us, and then we turn and face the Father Christmas. He wasn't there. It was all done by AI. So the whole Epstein thing, we have no idea what is really happening, and we have to be very careful about making assumptions because we can destroy a leader's reputation by something that actually isn't real. And that's where I think it's about integrity as a community and not making judgments. So one of the things I always say is don't make judgments, be non-judgmental and invite a conversation about the experience that is going on and what are we feeling? Because there's obviously a lot of hot feelings that your wife has, Doug, about Richard, and that's going to always control that situation. We've got the same with many high-profile politicians. I'm in a serious situation with my son who doesn't agree with my politics, and then it causes all sorts of ripple effects. So as leaders, we need to shine a light of trust and integrity and respect and values. That's what you mentioned, Rutherford, values, talking about values, sharing values in any culture, in any generation, in any preference. That is the key. And to agree to disagree, but
Mhm.
love, respect, a human. Anything that damages our humanness is dangerous. So we've got to make sure that we don't damage our humanness by making assumptions or judgments. That's what I feel.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Very important concept. Lulu, you've heard a lot here. There's a lot to digest. What would you like to share? Where do you
Thank
see
you.
there's a
Thank you
lot?
very much. Yeah, it's very important to talk about the leadership, leader, and culture. But I probably want to take it from a different angle. Um, I actually have evidence here. Every year, I have a journal, and I've done it for many years. But in there, actually, there's a question there. What are my core values? I want to share two of them with you, which links with being a leader and create a culture. So two of my core values are be curious to the world, like a little child, love people, life, and the world, like a little child. So I also think, why am I using this? Because actually, if you think about child, often I follow Doug's post on Facebook about his grandchild Luca. And if you think about, as a leader, actually, we could learn a lot from a child because they assume the best in people. So, and they don't hold a fixed opinion about people and the world. They're open to learn. They're open to different, like we, our adult world is called multiple truths. They are quite receptive. So they don't have problem of receiving multiple truths, if you like to call that. And the best thing is they assume the best in people. So when you're leading a team, when you're leading relating to people, uh, if you don't have that as a starting point, yeah, people will struggle. You can't be an effective leader. because you're always worried about what that person will see or think about you and all that. The whole thing just gets spiralized into a very negative pool of negative thoughts. So yeah, so I just think in a way, just want to share these two values with you. We could learn a lot from the child. So then you can create that quite innocent, pure culture starting from yourself. And the linked in with also Doug's point about to laugh. I just sent you two funny things through WhatsApp. Do you think um, adults can end up becoming so cynical, but children can laugh at anything? Yeah. So I think it's to live a free life, then you can be a more effective leader, like a child.
I love that. I love that very much. Thank you for sharing. There's a couple other people in the room, and we didn't organize anything particular, but Frank Beckman is one of the more mindful leaders that I've worked with in my career, and Gabriel Gonzales uh, uh, also Saavedra is also an amazing person that based in San Diego, and Frank being based in Berlin. Gabriel runs an executive search firm and deals with companies searching for executives that can change the game. And so I'm wondering, I certainly hadn't arranged anything with either of you ahead of time, other than hopefully we've let you know and you're here. That's great. You guys both see leaders, you both are leaders. Is there anything that you've heard today that you'd like to second, or that you'd like to disagree with, or that you'd like to add to?
From my perspective, I fully agree. I love what you said, especially Rutherford and Pauline, and also you. I love it because it's very important that we do not judge. Very often we do judge, and having social media at the moment where we instantly reply, we are triggered with instant emotions, meaning we will repeat something, stereotypes, wrong myth, or whatever, and we judge very fast. This also comes from because we always like to answer, but we do not have the art of questioning and active listening. If you have a lot of discussions, meetings, you see that people come up and they all have an opinion very fast. You even, the speaker does not need even to end, and they have it on their fingertips what they want to answer. So they are not listening. And if we start to ask more instead of giving answers, to listen more, then we can get rid of these judgments, of these prejudgments we very often have. Yeah, so I absolutely agree, and that's a very important issue, and glad that you raised that. Thanks very much.
Gabriel, did you have any comments based on, I mean, your daily activities globally and certainly in North America very frequently, you deal with leaders, you've seen a lot. How does this concept of culture and leadership culture and tied to success, what does that mean to you, and what other things would you like to share?
Thank you, first of all, Doug, for inviting me and having me here with all of you. Uh, I agree, with most of the comments, of course. Frank, I agree. Definitely, we need to be more listeners because that's where when we learn what we say, we already know, but when we listen, you get the new information. And I am blessed of doing what I do and have the opportunity to speak to leaders every day. And it's just amazing because, as Frank says, I just listen and learn how these guys are doing, what's their secret recipe. And I'm writing down every different secret recipe these leaders have. And I've learned over 17 years there's need to be authenticity. That's what I love in a leader, authenticity. Somebody that's very authentic, somebody that is congruent. You have to be congruent in what you do and what you believe and what you're leading, because then at the end of the day, it's going to come back to you. I mean, if you're leading a team and you're in a position of a CEO that is influencing a lot of thousands of people, and you could be a great leader, but you're not congruent with what you're saying, what you're doing. People see that and people feel that, and it's very easy. I mean, and so I would say definitely authenticity, congruency, integrity, of course. I mean, definitely it's a principle. But yes, it's incredible how we need to learn how to listen more. I mean, that's an ability that I've developed and continue to develop because I sometimes get excited and I want to participate more than anything with these leaders, but I just calm myself and say, okay, I need to listen, I need to learn, and just you know understand what are these leaders doing, and so I can then assess our clients and get that right fit of the culture. And so that's the magic that we do. We build long-lasting, happy marriages between candidates and clients. That's what we do. And to find the right fit, that's where we come in. Because it's not finding people. I mean, you can buy lists everywhere and LinkedIn, but the magic is listening and learning and connecting the right fit with the culture of the company. And so that's a magic. And I'm blessed doing this, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy these calls and video because I like the different perspectives, different countries. Of course, we recruit all over the world, and so. Thank you, Doug, for having me here, and I will be here as long as you invite me.
Rutherford, an executive recruiter, a good one like Gabriel that
Thank
handles
you.
high-level executives, has to understand culture, right? Because he's got a client and he understands who they are and where they want to be, and he's looking through candidates and needs to find a way to find congruence between those three things. Where is my client? Where do they want to be? Who do they want for this role? And then who is this person coming in? That's hard. When DuPont and Dow created a joint venture, which I was part of, everybody thought DuPont Dow, these are two chemical companies. Obviously, they're the same. It's easy to just merge all these things together. And I think all of us that have been through a merger know that whenever you assume two companies, even though they appear to be the same, they're not. And Dow and DuPont were radically different enough that eventually, along with a price fixing for the neoprene business by my boss, bad idea, Teo, destroyed that joint venture. But it was culture that started the challenge, and then the price fixing happened next. But isn't executive search got to be one of the toughest jobs? And you've probably worked on some executive
I'm
searches,
I'm losing
Rutherford. That
hair, so I don't know if you noticed, but
there,
it's a hard, yes,
it's
very
looking pretty.
rewarding, but oh my God, it's yes. And an analogy is you can see it in sports every day. I mean, you can have a rock star, an all-star, and if it comes into a team and if there's no fit, he's not gonna be successful. I mean, he could be a four-time Super Bowl player, but he comes to a team that doesn't have the mindset or the leadership, and it's not going to work. So that's the magic. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So
What
let me.
does your hair situation, Rutherford, say about your stress level?
This is I call this is a gift from God. This lack of follicles. So it was interesting. I just want to piggyback on what you said about that and like an executive. So yeah, you guys have all heard about Jim Collins' book, right? Good to Great, and he talks about bus and the right seats on, getting the people on the bus in the right seats, right? And I love that because that's so important because you talk about sports teams or lead or just teams and there's you used the word congruence or for me mismatch or they're in the wrong position. They're a good worker, leader, employee, however you want to phrase it, but they're not in the right job, right? And I've had experience with that, and you move them to their right position where they can flourish. I call it the zone of genius, where they're in it and time goes away because they are working exactly where they should, and their work output, the joy they have is so great. They don't know it's 5 o'clock, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm working 9 hours straight. I didn't take a break. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to eat lunch. Because they're so excited about that. So getting that right person in the right position is so critical. And what's the hardest thing about that, though, and Gabriel and everybody on the call is for me is 80% of that is the people themselves don't know what they're great at. They don't understand their natural strengths, gifts, talents and if that's the hardest thing for a leader to put people in the right position because most of the time they don't understand, hey, you're like a rock star at this specific thing. And you're like, oh, really? You think so? Yeah, the whole world thinks so. You don't understand it. And when we can put them in that role, oh, they flourish, the company flourishes and things like that.
I'd like to come in here that, when we look at men and women being different, so I've designed a map that understands the archetypes that we are as men and women. And I use this, it's very simple, there's 4 types. But understanding yourself is your key role in life, but understanding other people is your superpower. And when you don't understand other people, that's, as Rutherford said, you put them in the wrong place. And so the map I've designed is it allows us to have that conversation. So I put my book in the comments there that it's all about understanding not all women are the same, not all men are the same. We ask different questions, we use different words. I'll give you an example. I'm what I would call a masculine-minded woman. I use the word what. And my husband is a feminine-minded male. He's a philosopher and he uses the word why. So he always asks me a question using the word why, and I never hear it because I need a what. So he says, why are you doing that? I say, what are you talking about? Because I haven't got a why. So when leaders use the wrong words, we think that we don't get on with each other. And that's where we have to stand back and understand every single word counts. And if somebody doesn't understand what you're saying, you can see the reaction in their body. The first thing you need to do is say, stop, pause, and think, maybe my word didn't land the way I thought it was going to land. And have a conversation about how did you understand what I just said, or why I used the why, or whatever it was. The more we understand those differences, the more we can create a fantastic culture. Because everybody, in every culture, there are these types. In any country in the world, there are men and women in different cultures. So the cultural overlay is important, but the essence of who we are as men and women is fundamental. And I shared that on one of the Global Chamber meetings a couple of years ago. So it's in the archives. You can find it. But we can do that again, Doug. We'll do another session on relationship harmony.
So Rutherford, part of a culture, there is an element of harmony, and some leaders lead by disharmony. How does that play in? Is it more of a personal style where those kinds of cultures get generated? What are your suggestions there around what is an ideal culture for any of us as leaders?
So, well, it's an ideal culture. It's kind of what I said before. It depends on who you are, what what lights you up, right? So there's a book called I just lost it in my head. Oh, No Rules Rules, right? You know that it was a Netflix culture, right? And he wrote a book on that, and and so and it's the culture of radical honesty, right? So you have some companies who think because Netflix was successful, we're gonna take that book and we're gonna input that and implement it in our organization. And then you talked, I mean, you go back to Richard Branson. Is it this? It just depends on who you are, where you thrive the most, what kind of leader you want to follow. Because some people really like this, not me, but some people like to be said, here's the goal, here's what I want you to do. And they like that because they don't have to think. They don't have to do, they just get that. There's people like that. But there's also people who don't want that. Just give me the goal and I'll get there. So you have to find the leader that fits who you are and that the culture of the company. Now, all these people I've talked about, they're quote unquote successful, right? And I think about leadership and success and culture as I can tell you what's a good culture is if you want your best friend or your colleague from another company to come over and work with you at this company. Once that happens over and over again, the culture's good. However you define, if it's because that type of person, if they really want to work, 75 hours a week, this is, hey, you got to come over here. If they wanted to work another way and they want, the harmony, they want the Richard Branson type, you're gonna invite him over there, right? So that's when I know the culture is great. You can do surveys, which I don't like, engage. They're fine. I look at behavior of the people. I listen to what other people say, around the coffee machine, right? Water cooler conversations. That tells me more about the culture, right, than any survey, any consultant that comes in and does these things with the company. I think those are all, mediocre to bad ways to measure culture. I think your people tell you culture by how fast they leave,
Yes.
how long they stay, how many people they bring into their organization. Because if there's an opening and you have four people go, hey, I got a person, that culture's good.
I would agree. I think that's really important. Is if they're leaving the sinking ship, then there's a reason. Um, I'm just going to say a very simple baseline, a bit like what you said about be like a child. I think if we want a culture and a world of harmony rather than conflict and war, a world of harmony, there is no harm. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the nasty bits, war, etc., we want to get rid of, but we want to get rid of the nasty words. And that's where leaders can just stop and listen. Did I give an instruction that somebody rejected because you could see it in their body? Can I listen differently? Can I learn how to understand relationships? All of those things is down to the leader to build a culture where people feel safe as well, especially women. Women want to feel safe. It's a very big issue for women, security and safety, much more than for men, I think. But that's just one day. So a leader who's got men and women, and they need to be really careful about that. And there is evidence that a lot of women are leaving corporate world because they hate it. It's turned into a horrible, horrible place. That's just general information. And so they're out there in the sea of entrepreneurs. But we just need to understand that people will show you how they feel in the way they look. If they're not smiling or they're grimacing or they're running out the door or they're angry, you've got it wrong.
We do have another Globinar, the back to back to back. The third one in a row is coming up on global sales. Carla Watt is speaking starting in 5 to 10 minutes. So I encourage all of you to go there. There's a link a Zoom link in the chat. Carla's based in the UK. She's going to be talking about sales amidst the chaos and creating an order to the chaos. And so we only have a couple minutes, Rutherford. And so I think this is a topic as you mentioned, right at the stop. It never ends. We can talk about leadership till the cows come home and well beyond. Are there some comments, Rutherford, that you would like to make in closing, maybe in terms of what we should take away today? Anything that we should, as leaders, be thinking about for 2026, and then anything you'd like to share about what you'd like to accomplish in 2026.
Yeah, so listen, there was a common theme as a thread that I think you saw this, right? And it was about listening, right? Gabriel talked about this, Pauline talked about this with the what and the why, because that was listening. So the thing with leadership and culture, how do you build great cultures is you listen. How do you grow business? You listen. Let me explain listening. So it's gonna sound crazy, but let me explain listening. When I talk to people, I said, hey, the most important thing with leadership is listening. They go, why? So if you listen to your people, what they're saying, boots on the ground, if you listen to your customers, if you listen to the marketplace and you triangulate all those three things, you're going to make great decisions, right? And you're going to understand where to go next. You're going to treat people well. But it's that listening, it's not a small thing. It's one of the most difficult things we do as leaders is listen because we bring our own biases into these decisions and we think, hey, we got to I want this to happen, so we're going to do it this way. And we talked about this with the word control, right? Because we have too much control. So the thing I would say in 2026 is we talked about never getting to the mountaintop, never getting to climb Mount Everest. Listening is something we always can get better at. And if we want to grow as leaders, listening better and really listening, aggressive listening, just not hearing, but understanding and then being able to apply that listening. Because if you never apply some of the things that your team says, you're not listening. If you don't apply things that your customers say, you're not listening. And if you're not applying things that the marketplace is telling you, you're not listening.
I just
Dr.
want to
Crawford,
quickly add to this. I've been watching a program called Undercover Boss. I don't know if you have done that.
Yes.
I've watched it before. So
Yeah.
that is in a way a very good way of listening, because if you just ask for a report, they tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
But that is a very ingenious way of actually really listen to it and watch it yourself. Yeah.
Yep.
I'd like to just say
Crawford.
we need to play more and be like a child, and that is important, and use our imagination, because imagination is infinite, knowledge is finite. Just always remember that. Einstein said that.
Exactly. Just see how much fun things the children can do with just a cardboard box.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah. No toys necessary.
Thank you, Rutherford, for the time today. Thanks for bringing up my grandson, Luca, and he is a source of energy for me to watch his view of the world and the purity of being a child. It's sad as they get older because they get messed up by the whole system, right? It's just really disappointing. And it was so sad to see our daughter go through the school system. But she had the same purity at age 3, 4, 5 that Luca has. And it's an inspiration. So I encourage all of you to have children or to have grandchildren or whatever's appropriate. If you can adopt, or do whatever you need to do to do that. Colin Christie, who some of you know is our executive director in Manila, he retired, and after a couple of years started to get back involved with Global Chamber after he retired and moved to Manila, and he got married and he had 3 children. So he knows Paw Patrol and all of that, and God bless him. he stays young by being around the young, and he's a great leader and a great technologist. Thanks everybody for this really important conversation. Great kickoff, Rutherford. Super that we talked about culture as the starting point for the year. Thanks for all that you do for Global Chamber and the collaboration, just extraordinary. And I really appreciate your leadership also on the Global Chamber Phoenix Advisory Board. If you'd all like to be part of the global sales conversation, check out the link in the chat area. And in the meantime, be a child. Listen, learn, and laugh, and you're going to have a great year. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Gabriel, for jumping in.